The first thing I noticed was that she had set only one plate on the table. Just one. There was steak, medium rare, like I like it, roasted asparagus, mashed potatoes with skin, and a glass of my bourbon. All of it arranged with almost obsessive care. Candle lit, cloth napkin, jazz humming from the kitchen speaker. But just one plate. She was upstairs, talking to someone on the phone. I heard her heels pacing back and forth across the wood. I didn't mean to listen. I was standing at the bottom of the stairs, holding a bag of ice, trying to pretend I didn't exist for a second. She didn't know I was home yet. And that's when she said it. He's like a puppy. Loyal. Dumb. He'll believe anything. The laugh that followed was not the kind I ever heard from her. It was breathy, unfiltered, almost amused. Then silence. A drawer closed. Her footsteps approached the stairs, and I bolted back outside like a coward, left the bag of ice on the porch, and drove around the block twice just to reset my face. When I came back in, I made noise this time. Slammed the door louder than I needed to. She was already downstairs, wearing that smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "There you are," she said, like I hadn't been standing right here minutes ago. "Dinner's ready." I sat down at the table and pretended. I pretended I didn't hear her voice call me dumb. I pretended the empty seat wasn't a message. I pretended her phone screen flashing face down didn't mean anything. We talked. Or rather, I talked. She nodded and drank. She didn't touch her food. And when I asked, "Aren't you eating?" she smiled and said, "I already ate." It was 6:42 p.m. That sentence. That exact sentence. I don't know what it was about it, the way she said it. Maybe, but that was when I knew something in me had snapped. Not in rage. Not in panic. Just broken, like glass under pressure. Quietly, all at once. I folded my napkin, stood up slowly, and walked out of our home. Not slamming the door, not taking my keys, not even grabbing my coat. I left everything behind, like a man stepping out of a dream he no longer wants to be part of. I walked 6 miles that night. No destination. No plan. Just one phrase echoing in my head like a haunting. He'll believe anything. I wish I could say that was the worst thing I heard that week. But it was only Monday. And by Thursday, I'd find out the truth wasn't just uglier. It was professionally orchestrated. This wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. By the time I got back home that night, it was past midnight. I didn't expect the lights to still be on. But they were. Every single one. The kitchen, the hallway, even the bathroom upstairs. All lit like a stage. Like someone was trying too hard to make a house feel like home. Her car was in the driveway, parked perfectly straight, not a hair out of place. That was her. Precise. Intentional. Always 2 steps ahead, like life was a chessboard and I was just the smiling pawn. I stood outside for 10 full minutes before walking in, the cold clinging to my skin like shame. She was on the couch, curled up with a throw blanket, watching some show she never cared about. I knew because I'd suggested it to her last month and she dismissed it as too slow. But now she was watching it, sipping wine, eyes half focused like she needed background noise to cover her thoughts. She looked up when I entered and gave me this little smirk. Not warmth, not relief, just awareness. Like I had confirmed something she'd already predicted. I said nothing. Walked straight past her, up the stairs, into the bathroom. Locked the door. That's when I cried for the first time. Not loud. Just that tight-throated, airless sob that comes from holding it in too long. I wasn't even crying because of the sentence she said earlier. I was crying because it finally hit me. I had no idea who this woman really was. The person downstairs sipping Cabernet in silk pajamas wasn't the same girl I met at the old bookstore 7 years ago. That girl was quirky, curious, and used to doodle strange faces on receipts. This one, she didn't leave fingerprints. She erased trails. I opened the medicine cabinet and stared at my reflection for a while. My eyes were red, not from tears but from fatigue. Emotional exhaustion is the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. The next morning, I started looking. I didn't confront her. That would have been too direct, and she was too good at turning things around, like I was paranoid or insecure or making things up again. No, this time I decided to play her game. Quiet. Strategic. I waited until she left for her meeting downtown, then started with the trash. I know how pathetic that sounds, digging through your own garbage like a raccoon in denial, but you'd be surprised what people toss when they think you're too stupid to notice. That's when I found it. A receipt. One crumpled, wine-stained, damning little receipt tucked behind a crunched box of takeout. 2 dinners. A bottle of expensive red we'd never buy. A date. A time. 6:41 p.m. The same night she told me. I already ate. I felt something twist in my chest. Not like heartbreak, but more like confirmation. Cold, clinical, undeniable proof that the woman I came home to every night was living a second life just beneath the surface of our shared routine. But it didn't stop there. Her laptop was open on the kitchen counter. Normally, she never left it unlocked, password tighter than Fort Knox. But this time, open, like bait, like she wanted me to look. And God help me, I did. There weren't messages, no photos, nothing direct, just one open tab, a Pinterest board, titled New Beginnings, filled with apartment layouts, minimalist bedrooms, passport photos, and, I swear this is real, a screenshot of a quote that said, "Sometimes you don't owe anyone closure. Just a door." That was the moment it hit me. She was already halfway gone. She wasn't building an escape plan. She'd already finished it. But what I didn't understand yet was this. I wasn't the only one she was planning to leave. She had a second life. And he had no idea what she was capable of either. I didn't touch her that night. Not even accidentally. She came home humming to herself like someone who'd just gotten a job offer, tossed her coat onto the bench by the door, and gave me a look. Not a guilty one. Not even smug. Just distant. Calculating. The kind of look you give a dog when you're about to take it to the shelter, but don't want it to sense anything. I was already sitting in the living room, pretending to scroll through my phone. She plopped down beside me, asked if I'd eaten. I said yeah. She didn't ask what. She didn't care. We sat in silence. On the outside, everything probably looked normal. Married couple. Friday night. Cozy house. But there was a bomb in the room, ticking quietly in my chest. I couldn't stop thinking about that Pinterest board. New beginnings. I couldn't stop picturing her in one of those empty white apartments, laughing with someone else, erasing me like I was a bad dream. And what haunted me more than anything was how clean it all was. Not a fight. Not an affair that exploded. Just a surgical separation, like removing a tattoo you regretted getting. I wasn't her regret, though. I was her draft. The prototype before the final product. That weekend I told her I'd be working late. I wasn't. I drove to the address on the receipt. It was a small restaurant on the west side. One of those overpriced rustic places that serve you $12 soup in chipped bowls. I sat across the street in my car for 2 hours, eyes fixed on the front entrance like a cop on surveillance. I felt pathetic, but something told me I wouldn't feel crazy for long. At 6:36 p.m., she showed up. Alone at first. Hair pulled back. Same coat. Same boots. Her phone glued to her hand. She looked calm. Effortless. A man joined her 3 minutes later. I didn't recognize him. Mid-30s, tall, beard, expensive coat. The type of guy who probably had a car lease larger than my mortgage. He kissed her on the cheek. She laughed. Touched his arm. They walked in together like it was routine. I sat there, my hands trembling, trying to remember how to breathe. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was confirmation. But it wasn't rage that hit me. It was relief. The unknown was worse than the truth. Now, at least, I had something solid. But I also had questions. Too many. Who was this guy? How long had this been going on? Did he know about me? Or was he the fool in this equation, too? I went home before she did. Beat her there by 20 minutes. When she walked in, she didn't even look flustered. Told me she was at drinks with Steph from the office, and that it went later than expected. I nodded. Told her I hoped she had fun. She kissed me on the forehead, something she hadn't done in months, and then disappeared into the bathroom. That night, she slept like a rock. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting the lies in my head like sheep. The next morning, I made her breakfast. French toast. Strawberries. The syrup she liked. She acted surprised. Told me I was sweet. I told her she deserved it. She smiled. Said thank you. Kissed my cheek. It made me sick. But I played along. I needed to. Because I was done being the fool. Done being the good guy. You see, she wasn't the only one who knew how to plan. She was erasing me behind my back. Quietly. Carefully. So I decided I'd flip the script. And the first move? I called my cousin, the one who worked in IT for the city. What he helped me uncover would change everything I thought I knew about her, and expose a secret that made the cheating look like child's play. My cousin doesn't ask a lot of questions, which is exactly why I called him. He works security infrastructure for the city, The kind of job where you don't wear a badge, but you know exactly which server stores every traffic cam and which blind spots make things disappear. I told him I needed a favor. Nothing illegal, just off the books. Can you trace a license plate for me? I asked. There was a pause. Then he said, text it. I didn't hear anything. I sent him the plate number I'd scribbled on my palm the night before. The guy's car, the one parked half a block from the restaurant. I didn't expect much. Maybe a name. Maybe a hint. What I got instead was a callback 30 minutes later, and a voice that sounded a lot less casual than before. Darrell, he said, I don't know what you're in the middle of, but that car? It belongs to someone on the state payroll. Quiet title. Unlisted. That's not a good sign. I asked what kind of job. He didn't say. Just told me. Drop it, and hung up. Naturally, I didn't. I started watching her closer. Not obsessively, methodically. Every time she left the house, I made a mental note of what she was wearing, how long she was gone, what time she said she'd be back. I started using an old phone I kept from college. Wiped clean, no SIM, just Wi-Fi, and a hidden folder with voice memos. I recorded our conversations. Not because I planned to use them. Because I didn't trust myself anymore. I needed proof. Not just for what she was hiding, but for what she was trying to make me feel. Like I was unstable, forgetful, overreacting. That's the part no one warns you about. It's not just the betrayal that breaks you. It's the slow, deliberate gaslighting that makes you question the truth you can see with your own eyes. A week later, I got lucky. She forgot to close her laptop before taking a shower. Not just unlocked, open. Same Pinterest tab. But now there was another one. A folder on her desktop, discreetly titled Work Notes. I clicked it. Inside were PDFs, invoices, scanned documents, all seemingly related to her job at the firm. But one file stood out. It was named JRMX01 JPG, which looked more like a device serial number than a work file. I opened it. It wasn't a photo. It was a scanned page from what looked like an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. Signed, stamped, dated, but not from her firm. It was from a company I'd never heard of. I Googled the name. Nothing. I reverse searched the logo, no matches. And the more I dug, the more paranoid I got. Why did my wife have a legally binding document in her private folder from a company that didn't exist online? That night, I played it cool. We had dinner. She made small talk. I asked how Steph was doing. She said fine. I asked how work was. She said stressful. Then she looked up from her plate and asked me, why are you being so nice lately? That sentence hit me harder than anything else she'd said in months. Because I realized something terrifying in that moment. She expected me to unravel. She was waiting for me to explode, accuse, cry, beg. That's why she was leaving everything just slightly open. A laptop. A receipt. Her trail wasn't sloppy. It was deliberate. She wanted me to catch her. She wanted something else to happen. And that's when I understood, the man she was seeing? He wasn't a fling. He wasn't even a mistake. He was part of whatever this was. A plan. And whatever role I was meant to play in it hadn't happened yet. The mistake she made, the first real mistake, was trusting the house to be empty. It was a Thursday afternoon. She thought I was at work. I was supposed to be in meetings until 5. Instead, I was in the garage, sitting in the car with the engine off, trying to talk myself out of doing what I was about to do. I hadn't gone inside yet. I didn't want to see her face. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't trust what I'd do if I looked into her eyes and saw something I couldn't unsee. Then I heard her voice, muffled through the walls, near the back hallway, probably on speakerphone. I froze. Not because she was talking, she always talked, but because of how she was talking. Sharp, professional, cold, like a person reporting something. Not confessing, not explaining. I stepped out of the car slowly, closed the garage door manually so it wouldn't make noise, and crept around to the back porch, where the kitchen window was cracked open just enough to let sound through. No, he hasn't opened the folder yet, she said. A pause. Muffled voice on the other end. Then she added, it doesn't matter. He's soft. Predictable. He still thinks it's about the other guy. Something about the way she said the other guy made my skin crawl. Not because it wasn't true. It was. But because she said it like he was just a prop. Like he didn't even matter. She laughed, quietly. He'll take the payout. That's what these types do. They don't ask questions. They fold. My blood went cold. What payout? What folder? Who the hell was she talking to? And how long had I been just a type to her? She ended the call less than a minute later. I stood there for another 5, trying to keep from shaking. When I finally walked in through the front door, loudly, deliberately, she greeted me from the living room like nothing had happened. "Hey, babe," she said casually, eyes glued to her laptop. "You're home early." I stared at her from the entryway. "Yeah, meeting got canceled." She smiled and nodded without looking up. I waited for her to ask more. She didn't. That was when I realized we were no longer in a marriage. We were in a negotiation, and she thought she was winning. That night, I went back to the folder, the one on her laptop. Work notes. I plugged in a USB drive, copied it all, every file, every docs, every JPG, every innocuous spreadsheet and PDF. Then I started looking for what didn't belong, what wasn't visible. That's when I found the hidden folder. It was embedded in a metadata trail behind a renamed zip archive, the kind of thing only someone with a technical background would even think to check. I opened it. Inside were 4 video files and 1 text document. I played the first clip. It was silent, just surveillance footage. Time-stamped. Her and the man I saw at the restaurant. Only this time, they weren't at a restaurant. They were inside a small office with no signage, sitting across from a third person, someone blurred, deliberately. The audio was corrupted or missing, but I didn't need to hear it to understand what I was watching. It was a transaction, not romantic, not emotional, business. And the most disturbing part? She was the one leading it. I opened the text file next. At the top was a name, one I didn't recognize. Then bullet points. Cold. Strategic. Things like establish instability narrative, document interactions, digital and physical. Phase 3. Initiate concerned spouse, contact if refusal occurs. Settle quietly, less than or equal to $75,000 ideal, NDA required. I read it 3 times before I realized what I was looking at. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a setup. I wasn't being cheated on. I was being removed. Strategically, financially, psychologically. And the worst part? I still didn't know why. But I was done playing defense. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. I sat in the guest room with the USB drive in one hand and a kitchen knife in the other, not out of rage, but fear. Irrational, animal fear that if I closed my eyes, the world would shift again and I'd wake up somewhere I didn't recognize. My own life had become hostile terrain, and she was navigating it like a native. I stared at the bullet points in that document until the words burned behind my eyes. Establish instability narrative. Settle quietly. Less than or equal to $75,000 ideal. The fact that there was even a dollar amount terrified me more than the betrayal itself. She had put a price tag on my silence, on my disappearance, like I was just another expense in some polished legal strategy. I kept asking myself the same questions on a loop. Why? Why go through all this trouble? Why not just divorce me like a normal person? Why construct this theater of affection, pretend to love me, gaslight me slowly until I started to doubt my own sanity? What could she possibly gain from all this? And more importantly, who was paying her to do it? At 4:16 a.m., I sent my cousin a message. Just 3 words. I need everything. I knew he'd understand what I meant. 20 minutes later, I got a ping. He'd traced the company name from the NDA I found, or at least tried to. It didn't show up in any public records. Not in state filings, not in LLC registries, not in Shell Corp leaks. But he did find an address. One that appeared on a city permit for structural renovations filed under a generic property developer's name. The building had been zoned as professional consulting space. No signage, no website, just walls. It was downtown, walking distance from her office. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek before leaving. Told me she had a double stack of meetings and might be home late. I told her to take her time. She smiled like nothing in the world was wrong. Like she hadn't been recording my behaviors, managing my breakdown like a case file, and preparing to scrub me from her life with legal bleach. As soon as she pulled out of the driveway, I left too. I didn't go to work. I went to the building. It was exactly what I expected, polished but anonymous. Gray glass, white stone, a lobby that smelled like air freshener and paperwork. I didn't go inside. I just watched. For nearly 2 hours. I saw 6 people go in, 3 come out. No one looked under 35. No signs, no branding, not even a suite number. But then she walked in. No hesitation. No glance back. Like she belonged there. I took a photo of her walking through the door, another of her entering the elevator beyond the glass wall. I texted both to myself from the burner phone, just in case. And then I drove home, because I had something more dangerous to do than spy. I had to confront the lie, not directly, but on paper. I pulled out our shared safe box, the one with all the financial records, old tax forms, birth certificates. She kept everything in neat folders. That was her way. Give chaos structure and pretend it's under control. But there, buried behind retirement and insurance, I found a folder I hadn't seen before. No label. Inside were photocopies of me, bank accounts, medical prescriptions, one of my private journals, a spreadsheet titled Patterns with columns labeled Outbursts, Withdrawals, Sleep Habits, and, most damning, Signs of Paranoia. She'd been building a case, a narrative, one where I was mentally unstable, where she was the concerned, loyal wife. And I was the liability. The payout wasn't a bribe. It was a settlement, to get me out of the picture without a fight. But now there would be a fight, and I wouldn't be the one caught off guard this time. The thing no one tells you about gaslighting is that once you realize it's happening, your first instinct isn't revenge, it's shame. Not fury, not hatred, just a silent, humiliating sense of how long it took you to notice. You replay every conversation, every moment you doubted your instincts, and realize how many tiny paper cuts you let turn into open wounds. That night, after reading through her case against me, the spreadsheet of my erratic behavior, the calendar of my supposed withdrawal periods, I didn't sleep. Again, my thoughts were crawling over each other like insects in a jar, frantic and directionless. But somewhere in that chaos, I realized something vital. If she was building a story, it meant she needed me to stay in character. So I gave her what she wanted. For the next 4 days, I became the version of myself she'd spent months documenting. Quiet, numb, distracted. I stopped asking questions. I missed calls. Forgot groceries. She even asked me once if I was okay, and I could tell she was hoping I'd say no, that I'd crack, that she could start phase 3. Instead, I told her I was just tired, and she smiled like she'd finally calibrated me to the right level of dysfunction. She didn't know I'd already made 3 backup copies of everything in her hidden folder. She didn't know I'd uploaded them to a cloud account under a fake name. And she really didn't know that I'd scheduled an anonymous email to be sent to a law firm that specialized in whistleblower litigation, one of the few in the state licensed to investigate shell corporations tied to mental health fraud. I wasn't even sure yet what this was. Conspiracy? Insurance scam? Some hyper-polished exit strategy with layers I hadn't even begun to peel back? But I had enough pieces now to know this wasn't personal. It was procedural, and that made it even more dangerous. On the 5th day, I went into our walk-in closet while she was at Pilates and started packing, not to leave, but to hide things. I took every personal document I cared about, every hard drive, every spare ID, and buried them inside a duffel bag I shoved into the crawl space behind the laundry room. Just in case I came home one day and found the locks changed. Just in case they tried to institutionalize me based on their beautifully curated narrative of a man slowly losing his grip. Because that's where this was headed, wasn't it? Not divorce. Not even extortion. They were going to paint me as a risk. An unwell husband with a deteriorating mind. They wouldn't just erase me. They'd discredit me. So when I finally made my move, I knew it had to be quiet, surgical, undeniable. I created a new email account. Encrypted. I wrote a message and attached 3 files. The NDA, the patterns spreadsheet, and a screen capture of the surveillance video where she was blurred but clearly present in what looked like a corporate negotiation. I wrote no explanation. No rant. Just this. I believe someone is attempting to use psychological fraud to remove a spouse and silence liability. I have evidence. If I disappear, this is my statement of record. Then I BCC'd it to 2 more law firms and scheduled the message to send in 72 hours. A countdown. A fuse. If nothing happened by then, I could always cancel it. But if something did, if I disappeared, got arrested, found myself in a hospital with depression, written on a clipboard I never saw, the world would know I didn't go quietly. When she got home that night, she found me watching a show I didn't care about, eating takeout I didn't order, surrounded by receipts and unpaid bills. I looked unshaven, unmotivated, unwell. She looked at me with this strange mix of pity and victory. like a farmer watching the barn finally catch fire. You should really talk to someone, she said gently, placing her hand on my shoulder. I looked up at her with dull eyes, just like she wanted, and said, maybe you're right. And that was the moment I knew I'd earned her trust again, which meant I could finally break it, in a way she wouldn't see coming. The thing about pretending to fall apart is that, after a while, you get good at it. Too good. You start to understand how dangerous quiet can be, how silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes it's pressure building in a sealed room. That final week, I let her think she had won. I played the role of the lost, withdrawn husband with eyes too tired to see what was in front of him. She started leaving her laptop open again, started sighing louder, like she was baiting me into another incident. And one night, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her whisper on the phone, "It's almost time." Those words should have broken me, but instead, I smiled, because I'd already made my move. The timer on the scheduled email ticked past the 72-hour mark 2 days earlier. I didn't cancel it. 3 law firms had received the files. One of them responded, not to me, but to her. It happened on a Thursday morning. She was in the kitchen making coffee when her phone lit up. I was watching from the hallway, sipping from the same chipped mug she said she hated. Her eyes scanned the screen, and I saw her body stiffen in real time. The color in her face drained as she muttered, "No, no, no," and rushed upstairs. She didn't leave the house for 3 days after that. She barely spoke. I heard her crying through the bathroom door once. No makeup, no mask, no performance. Just someone realizing the script had been burned. And I didn't gloat. I didn't throw it in her face. That would have given her something to work with, a reaction to frame. Instead, I waited until Saturday morning. I made eggs, toast, orange juice. I placed her plate across from mine at the table, just like old times. She came down eventually, cautious, like I might have changed since yesterday. But I hadn't. I smiled, told her I was thinking of taking a trip. Alone. She didn't respond. Just looked at me with those tired, cornered eyes. I might be gone a while, I added. Might not come back at all. That got a blink. Then a whisper. You know, it didn't start like this. I believe you, I lied. She asked if we were okay. We'll be whatever you can live with, I said. Then I left. Not angrily. Not broken. Just done. I moved in with a friend an hour out of town. Changed my number. Let my cousin help me scrub what needed to be scrubbed. One of the law firms filed a formal inquiry into the company she'd worked with. Turns out it did exist, just behind enough layers to keep the wrong people from looking. It offered consulting services for high-asset separation cases, quiet removal, narrative crafting, domestic risk management. Legal, but grotesque. She resigned 2 weeks later. I saw the announcement online. She'd written a carefully curated statement about mental health and stepping back to reevaluate personal priorities. I almost laughed. I never pressed charges. I didn't want money. I didn't want court. I just wanted peace. And that's exactly what I got. I live quieter now. Smaller. A rented cabin near a lake. I grow vegetables. I read books. I don't wake up with my chest tight anymore. I've made friends who don't ask questions I don't want to answer. And some nights, I sit outside with a glass of bourbon and remind myself, I wasn't weak. I wasn't crazy. I was targeted. But I survived it. She doesn't know where I live. She never will. And honestly, that's the real revenge.